Welcome to the Bleep Bulimia podcast with guest Ben Oofana, the healer. Hi, everyone. I am Lorianne. I am the host of Bleep Bulimia. And today I have Ben Oofana with me. He is known as the healer. He's been in practice for 35 years, and it's wonderful. But we're going to want to know a little bit more about what it means about being the healer. So, Ben, can you give us a little bit of an intro about this?
I'll give you as concise of a version as possible. Starting from early childhood, I was just drawn to Native Americans and other indigenous peoples, and began to hear about the traditional Native doctors and the kinds of visionary experiences that they would have going through the vision quest and other intensive practices they did. And so at 14, deciding, well, if I ever had the opportunity, this is what I'll do with my life. By 17, I had taken off on my own, still in high school. My car got me as far as Oklahoma. I landed in a community of predominantly Kiowa Indians in the southwestern part of the state. And going into the peyote meetings, I would sit up with these native elders all through the night. And that's where I met my mentor. Horace Delkai is one of the last surviving traditional Kiowa doctors. And during the apprenticeship, he would pass on portions of his own healing. And in order to earn the right to work with these gifts of healing, you go through the vision quest, which typically entails going like 4 days and nights. You're fasting, no food, no water, alone in the mountains. And also, it's through the vision quest that you receive additional gifts of healing to where you can assist other people and yourself as well.
That's really interesting. So I did read about how childhood trauma was part of this journey too. I don't know if you want to
Yeah.
share about that,
Oh,
but
sure.
I think that that's important for my listeners to hear.
Yeah, I went through a great deal of physical and emotional abuse growing up, through my childhood and adolescence, and in many ways, I was very dissociated, very disconnected. Like so many of us, when we're in the midst of these, the hell that we're living through, we're in survival mode.
Mm.
It's we just we're doing the best we can to survive it, and much of the stress or the emotion that we're experiencing, it doesn't fully register. And so at 17, when I took off, I just felt like, wow, I'm free. And I was just running wild. A
Oh, that's
friend said to me, like, getting you high is like pouring gasoline onto fire. And but it was in my mid 20s. See, my mentor, when he would transmit these portions of his own healing gifts to me, and that was laying dormant within. And so when I started working with people, and that power started to awaken inside of me. It was like pouring hydrogen peroxide into an infected wound. And
oh,
so the trauma was making its way to the surface then, and it was working itself out through my attempts to form intimate relationships. I would form attachments to women at that time who were also deeply wounded, who themselves carried a lot of trauma. Some were just unavailable or disinterested, but some were also quite abusive. And so
oh,
yeah, and and so again, the women that I formed attachments to at that time were a reflection of my own emotional wounding. And in the beginning, just being grossly ignorant. There was two things going on simultaneously because on one hand, I had my own trauma surfacing that I had to work through, that what I needed to do to heal that. And at the same time, I had all these individuals coming to me with a wide range of health related issues and themselves also many.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
mhm.
sorry, we were
I was going to
talking
say it could
about,
be very wrenching. It could be,
yeah.
it really hits me emotionally at times because I go into these situations, I work with people in these like these times and 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 also just the extent of the trauma that I see with people. People who have suffered, all kinds of, again, emotional, physical, childhood sexual trauma, and recovering these memories in many instances of people who had maybe limited recollection or even years of their lives just blacked out, no recollection at all. And here it's coming back and being present and helping people to navigate and digest these experiences. But you were going to say?
I was going to say, so we were talking previously prior to the starting the recording regarding one part that I said is letting go of unhealthy habits or the unhealthy.
Mhm.
And of course, this is Bleep Bulimia. So one of our
Mhm.
unhealthy habits is not eating. Eating is healthy. It's actually eliminating the food that we bring in that's healthy for our bodies and not
Mhm.
being able to have a proper relationship with food. So as I was telling you, 30 years, I was bulimic, 13
Mhm.
years free of it. And I learned to have a friendship with my food. I wouldn't even say that food was ever an enemy. In fact, it was my best friend, but I was
Mhm.
obsessed with it to numb my pain or whatever, or my anger or whatever. At some point, I had to find a nice balance to say, you know what, I really love you and I want to really enjoy you and I want to enjoy my family dinners and so on and so forth. Um, but there is trauma behind that.
Mhm.
Usually, I won't even say that they're all big traumas. They could be minimal, mini traumas that add up to where you feel all of this, where food is your comfort. Okay, and I'm just trying to explain this. A lot of my listeners understand this.
Mhm.
Um, but where an alcoholic or cigarette smoker or drug addict, they can go into rehab and not have that anymore. And I know it's very difficult. Don't let me like minimize this. But with a bulimic, it's food. You need to consume food to survive. So to make that relationship where you can keep the food in your life, right? You can't go off of it. And to balance it out, that's something very interesting. Like, so you said that you're a healer. Like, how would you deal with something and obviously we're all different, all of us are really different in why we became bulimic. A lot of us though do share quite a bit of the perfectionist thing, the controlling thing,
Mhm.
feeling controlled by somebody in a upper echelon, whether it's a husband, a mother, a father, or whatever, wanting to prove to be perfect. So with that little story about what bulimia is all about, how would you go about, and you don't have to go into detail, but you told me that give me a scenario and I can maybe give you something back. So that's what I'm doing.
We have a certain predisposition, so we'll act it out or we'll manifest it in one way or another. Over time, these patterns or behaviors can become habituated. And so as we continue to enact these behaviors, the patterns become more and more deeply entrenched. And there's also these patterns, there's elicits an emotional response. And the fact that we numb, we suppress, we deny, we avoid, we don't want to go there, we don't want to feel, and those accumulate within our bodies. And that's a reinforcement of the patterns.
Yeah. So you were
I'll
talking
give
about
some,
working,
go ahead.
sorry, I was going to say you were talking about working with children. Here, what I'm
Yes.
talking about is I have on Facebook a
Mhm.
group and it's called
Mhm.
midlife bulimia, right?
Right. Mm.
I have over 200 people on there looking for answers to it who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s. We're talking about people who either started in menopause stage because of it's like a different kind of puberty, or ones that have accumulated the years from having started. Like me, I started 18 and I stopped at 48, but I was midlife when I stopped.
Mhm.
If you're working with people like that, a little bit different than
Mhm.
children, in a sense, because I mean, you have to pull up a whole bunch of things that they
True.
may not even know why it was caused, right?
Right.
Sorry, that's just a question because now we're adults, right? We're not kids anymore. Like,
And this is, no, I appreciate I appreciate your bringing that in here because all kinds of individuals with so many different issues. And in many instances, I may have a limited amount of information about the individual going into it. As much as possible, I will talk with that person over the phone and like, what's going on? What is it you would like to address? But even when I do that, in many instances, they're not always sharing a lot of the
mhm.
everything I need to know. And so I will, in many instances, I'll make house calls or people come to see me. And other times, like I'm in Oakland or Richmond, California, a suburb of Oakland, right at the very moment I'm traveling. And so I'll have instances where maybe where I work with will line up some of their friends, other people for me to work with. So I have all these individuals come in with a whole range of challenges. And, what you were describing, individuals say, from their teens, 20s, 30s, 40s, and on that are still struggling with bulimia. And so again, there are so many different manifestations that how our emotional wounding expresses either physiologically within our bodies or behaviorally. So one of the things that I do initially as I work with people is I'll have people stand in front of me and I hold my hand in front of the body. I'm like scanning the body. So I'm feeling as I scan where people are at in their lives, how they're coping, their emotional states, kinds of emotions are that they're struggling with, what resources they have, and again, lack thereof when there are certain deficits. And and so as I do that, I'm beginning to feel like the specific issues that they're struggling with, how they're wounded emotionally. And so, I mentioned earlier that instinctively, when I had the traumas of my own childhood and adolescence, when they were surfacing in response to relationships, the romantic attachments that I formed. So as I'm working with different individuals, I'll have them, as I'm looking, I'm getting a sense of the challenges they're facing, but also I'll ask them, what is it that's concerning you? What do you feel is most pressing? Where are you struggling? And so I'll have them specifically bring those concerns, those issues, maybe an individual or a situation, whatever it is that they're struggling with, I'll have them bring that to the forefront of their awareness. And then notice, it's like, okay, as you bring that to the forefront of your awareness, what do you feel in your body? Physically, emotionally, what are the feelings? What are the sensations? Where do these feelings and sensations reside within your body? And I'll have them drop their awareness into the depth of these feelings and sensations and breathe very softly, very deeply. And it's not, they're not breathing it out. They're not trying to manipulate or change those feelings or sensations. Just be present with them. That so much of the dysfunction that we enact in whatever form it manifests is we have these powerful emotional drivers. And when we disconnect from our emotions, we numb ourselves out, we distract ourselves, we don't want to go there, we self-medicate with alcohol, other recreational drugs or pharmaceuticals, and we can't access those emotions, then the tendency is that we're going to act out in one way or another. And I know with bulimia, for instance, a lot of times the the cycle of eating and purging, all that, it can be a way, it's sort of an attempt in a way to regulate those distressing emotions.
Yeah.
And so what I find is I'm able to teach people to be present, to work with those emotions, to actually digest them, and they become more connected with their bodies, their physical body. They're connected with their emotions. They're processing, they're digesting their authentic emotional responses, and then so the triggering emotions, as they're able to become more connected, develop a greater awareness of what it is they're feeling, these powerful drivers or emotional forces, then there's a lessening of that the dysfunctional behavior in whatever manifestation it is. Now,
That's perfect, by the way. That is absolutely
yeah.
perfect because
Now, the
so I was
oh,
just
go
going to say
ahead.
quickly, if you look at if you listen to any of my previous ones, one thing that I did say the first 3 months, processing emotions was the most difficult thing that I had to do while I was non-bulimic because I had eaten my emotions for 30 years. Now I'm
Mhm,
not eating my emotions and I have to process them. And I love what you said, digest them properly.
mhm,
That's a perfect word. Thank you very much for that. But once you do, um, and it really is like we're using food as an emotional outlet. And people that some of the people that follow me, they go, no, 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 it's my weight thing. No, your weight thing is an emotional thing too. Like your fear of gaining weight is an emotional thing not, that's a surface thing. There's something
mhm.
behind it. Wouldn't you agree?
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
And these patterns in whatever manifestation, again, bulimia, or it could be cutting, or it could be, you know, s-
Many things.
people that
Anorexia,
are,
you name it.
there's
Yeah.
so many forms of self-destructive
Yeah.
behaviors, where people are just out of control, destroying themselves, like heavy drinking and other drug use, and again, indiscriminate promiscuity, or putting themselves in all kinds of dangerous situations where they get hurt, uh,
Yeah.
attracting
Mm.
individuals into their lives who abuse and abandon them. This, again, so many manifestations.
You're the healer and you went through a lot of indigenous and by the way, like my great
Mhm,
grandmother was Métis, so somewhere along
mhm,
the way I've got Canadian the Canadian indigenous people in me in my blood, probably about 0.1%, but I do. But I've always been
mhm,
fascinated with their beliefs.
mhm,
um I really am very respect their beliefs as well.
mhm.
So you're talking about the healing. So this is where I wanted to sort of pull it in together. So, and then there's another couple of questions I have from you speaking that I want to address before we say goodbye.
Sure.
Um, so definitely I read about your intuitive, and I know that the indigenous people with their spirituality and so on, intuition is a big thing as well. Knowing the person. You were saying that you scan someone with your hands. So obviously you
Mhm,
must have some intuitive power in your hands, which I have heard that
mhm.
too. I'm a very open-minded person.
Yeah.
So I do believe that these are all possibilities. Um, and I'm going to say really quickly, I'm really sad that some people out there are frauds and make it seem
Mhm.
like this is not possible, but I do believe it is. I wish there weren't frauds out there, but they do that to you.
Right.
Um, so this is where I'm going to come to. So I need to find out because you're known as the healer, and we've talked about all these consequences. What is your method, and why are you known as the healer? Before we go, and then I also want people to know where to find you. So give me that.
Sure. A few things, real quick. One, I want to share some because the resources that are available will vary depending on an individual's location. And so I want to describe like or share some of the various interventions that I have found to be effective.
Mhm.
And that's going to, again, depending on where you're located. Here I had the good fortune to happen to be in the right place at the right time and get to train with this traditional Native American doctor. But there are very few people working at this level at this time in history. Now, there's sadly that you mentioned some of the fraudulent stuff, and sadly, the tendency with a lot of the new age or new aginess or whatever is it trivializes everything with which it comes into context. And so you'll have people going through, for instance, 3 weekend workshops and calling themselves master healers. And it's just absolute nonsense. It takes many years of training. And you don't just go through a workshop and pay the fee and now you're a healer. Usually it's a one-on-one apprenticeship, and these extraordinarily gifted healers from these traditions like you find in Malaysia, Indonesia, among the Native Americans, usually they just take on one or a few apprentices. But interventions that are accessible, for instance, like I was exploring and finding whatever I could, that would facilitate the healing of my own emotional wounding. So deep tissue massage is something that is more readily available that you could find in most anywhere here in North America or Europe and many other parts of the world. And the good thing about deep tissue massage is it helps you to become more connected with your body, because a lot of times that's part of the challenge. There's this profound disconnect. And the more we shut down or numb out emotionally, the more disconnected we are. Acupuncture could be valuable for some. Interventions like floatation tanks, the sensory deprivation floatation tanks, because that helps you to become more present with your body. And again, the more disconnected, the more we shut down or numb out or disconnected emotionally, to enact these dysfunctional behavioral patterns. My wounding was so profoundly deep. And what I found, the three most powerful interventions was doing the deep tissue massage, because a lot of the emotion, the stress is held throughout our body, all through the musculature, and it'll bring these emotions up into conscious awareness so that we can begin to process it. Again, what I said earlier is that the emotional wounding, we store it in our body. It's the brain's biochemistry and neurostructure refer to as whatever, but within the soul bodies, the aura, the chakras, I see, feel this, what's happening within the internal organs, within the brain itself. And so what I found is when I had the opportunity to work with some powerfully gifted healers, like from Brazil and the Philippines, a few others, that helped me to start to dismantle or break up some of the holding patterns and begin to develop a new foundation. Now, when I'd go through the vision quest, my mentor started me with that. And then at 31, I was feeling I need to get back to the mountain. I'm up there 4 days and nights, no food, no water, alone in the mountains. And while I'm on the mountain, there are times where it's like a near-death experience. It's like portions of my life would be coming back, memories that I either had a vague recollection of, some I had completely no recollection. It's all flooding back. The memory, the emotions, I'm reliving it. And I'm digesting all this lived experience, all the emotions, those highly charged emotions. And it's like this extraordinarily powerful presence is like building this new foundation instead of the old distorted model that I had carried from the past. It's building this new foundation. And so what I find is that my relationship with myself is cleaning up. Again, bulimia or cutting or whatever manifestation, it's a reflection of our relationship with ourself. There's this wounding and we got this disconnect and we're not processing the emotions. So what happens? We act it out in one way or another. And so I'd be on the mountain going through the vision quest in these parts of me, or I'm digesting those lived experiences, all those highly charged emotions. As you do so, you you integrate these parts of yourself that have been wounded, you integrate them. They become healthy, functional aspects of you. You have, when these parts of you are in a deeply wounded state, they're split off. They're working against you in a sense. Now you're not in alignment,
Yeah.
and you're acting out, you're manifesting, or it could be manifesting as physical
When
health
you say
issues.
manifesting, there's different kinds of manifesting. You can manifest for the good, you can manifest for the negative, you can manifest what's going to happen in your life in the negative, you can manifest what's happening in your life for the better, right? I mean, from what I understand from
Yeah.
manifesting, I've heard a lot about it. I read The Secret. I mean, I know,
Mhm.
quantum physics and so on and so forth. Um, for me, my life has gone in a direction that I didn't think it ever would, but it always brought me to where I
Mhm.
should be, which is weird. I had a dream when I was a kid. I was going to do this, 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 and it had nothing to
Yeah.
do with that. But what I love about it, when I
Mhm.
look on the path of my life, and some of the things, yeah, I wish I hadn't done. But if I hadn't done that, it wouldn't take me to the next one. If I had done
Mhm.
this, then I wouldn't be here. If I hadn't done that, then I would be there. So to me, everything is, and that's my belief. But I'm amazed how, I mean, I'm living with my mom. I was
Mhm.
kicked out of my place. She asked me to move in just quickly. This was when my dad was not well. I got to be with
Mhm.
him for the last year and a half of his life, help mom out so that he wasn't in a hospital. And I had dreams of being an architect, being rich, not being married. I got married. I had 3 kids. I got divorced. I mean, none of my life is what I wanted it to be.
Mhm.
But everything brought me to where I believe I should be today, including I love my job. I love the people
Mhm.
I'm working with on my new part-time, external thing. Being with my mom and her being able to stay in the house. So it's kind of weird, but what I'm saying is that, like, manifesting, I didn't manifest any of this, but life led me there. But maybe I did. Like, maybe somewhere in my mind, I was manifesting all of this. I don't know.
Mhm.
It's possible that you can manifest it without knowing your subconscious is manifesting something for you? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, definitely. I think many of us have an idea of what we think we want, and yet there's a, a deeper
Right?
process,
Yeah.
like I don't know, for lack of a better word, it's like there's some kind of knowing or some kind of life path. Now, a lot of times, as when we're as we disconnect from our body, as we disconnect from our intuition, the deeper instinctual knowing, we can get pulled off course. We could get pulled into all kinds of things. And the other
True.
thing I find is that many people, because of the emotional wounding, is that so much of their life gets is so caught up in the drama and the dysfunction that they're enacting out. And what I find is the more that I do in terms of healing my own woundedness, the more that I connect with this inner core being, it's like there's this deeper intelligence that guides me not only along what that I'm here to do in this lifetime, but a healthier and more fuller expression of that. And I find that as well as I work with various individuals, because I find so many people, there's there's the emotional wounding itself, and I see how they're acting out, whether destructive relationships or
Mhm,
substance
mhm,
abuse or
mhm,
just a lot
mhm.
of people, there's just all this heaviness, this stagnation in their bodies. And so people are not as present, they're not as engaged. They're
But they don't even
maybe,
look at the connection of what bad could bring to good. I mean, let me tell you, my life was full of this and this and this and this. And my listeners, I'm doing an up and down roller coaster. My daughter
Yeah.
said to me, she goes, Dad was always on the constant, even after our divorce, everything. She
Mm.
says, I've never seen anyone go up and down like you. But she says, you always bring yourself up again. And,
Yeah.
you're talking about the drama. People will keep themselves down. With the healing, there has that positive energy to say, you know what, I can get back up again. There's always something. I lived in a barn with no running water. There was
Mm.
electricity though, but I took water from outside. I did that for
Hmm.
3 years, and here I am in, 50 years old. I loved it. I loved it. It was glamping, man. Like if you
Mm.
take anything and you put it into a proper perspective, and why was I there? And why
Mm.
did I move on to the next? And why did I move on to the next? And when I do a map of my life, everything that I learned was the map of my life. And I love that you heal people, but like I would imagine a big part of your healing is getting people to realize, um, man, I mean, trauma can be super bad. I know too. I've had one of those too. But does it outweigh the absolute benefits of where life has brought you? And when someone can't come to that point where they say, no, it really doesn't, I don't get it because I'm an optimist and I don't get pessimists. And I know people are like that, and I'm not dissing them. But really, seriously, if you really, really look into your life, you really look into it, no matter how good or bad it was or how bad it is, there's a reason for it. And there's something good that comes out of everything that you struggle with. Something good, whether it's helping someone. Look at me, I've got the podcast, right? I have you on
Yeah.
here. I get to meet you. I just sometimes I just wish understand. Um, yes, you can recover. Yes, you can recover from anything. You can find people like you, Ben, who can help and
Yeah.
heal. And I love that you're very intuitive because I feel very intuitive. I can't heal that way, but I am very
Hmm.
intuitive about feelings and so on and so forth. And I find intuitive people are the best healers because they really can get the aura from somebody and know what they're going through. So I loved having you out here doing that. I know that you have a website. Can you please tell our listeners where to find you?
Sure. Let me add in something real quick is that,
Sure.
yes, so we do experience along the way various uh, traumas, or we go through different adversity. There's even just the stress of day-to-day life, the financial stress of
Yep.
struggling to survive, and things, it could go a number of ways. And sometimes the wounding, the stress, the trauma can so, I'm not sure the best word, but maybe overshadow or eclipse a lot of our inner beauty, and it could prevent us from living
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
is full of our life, or from fully realizing our potential and living our life purpose. So again, it could go either way. And that's why it's so critically important that we do the practice and make use of the most powerful therapeutic interventions. Because when we can heal and transform the emotional wounding, the trauma, learn to work constructively with our emotions, then we can take the emotional wounding, the trauma, the stresses, and we could transform it in a way so that it becomes fuel for growth, and so that it catapults us, becomes the fuel or the momentum that enables us to develop, to become truly extraordinary. So again, it's how we use it. So the ways people can find me is
By the way, I want to tell
best
you, I love what you
way.
just said. Sorry, I didn't mean to interject, but I did. I love what you just said, and I want to
Uh-huh.
make that a clip because that is beautiful and it's exactly what I wanted to hear today, and I want my listeners to hear. So thank you so much for that, Ben. So yes, where to find
Sure.
you?
Best way is my website. It's benoofana.com, BENOOFANA.com. So again, benoofana.com. that's the best way you can reach me. You can reach out to me through my Google Voice, 332-333-5155. But best go to my website, benoofana.com, because I have published quite a few articles and I have lots of resources. I continue to write, over the years, like going back in time, the traditional Native American doctors, medicine men and women, they were known for their areas of specialization. And in those days, in times past, there were many extraordinarily powerful Native doctors. But sadly, there's very few people practicing at this time. And because I've gone through the Vision Quest so many times, and because there's so few people practicing, I have people coming to me with just about everything imaginable. So I've written a lot of articles, and over time, I continue to write more. And so if I'm not addressing something specific, be patient. I'll get around to it at some point. But many of the articles that I have written will address various issues or concerns or challenges that you are facing. And you could even subscribe to my YouTube, Ben Oofana YouTube. Just look me up on
Yeah, I
YouTube.
saw
You
that
could
you have
find me
all of
there.
that's the other thing too, listeners, on that website. There's a link to all of his social media. So yeah, so that's perfect because I saw that. But
Yeah.
and some good videos too. You have some videos as well and everything that you linked on there. But yes, and also on the YouTube. So please visit Ben. And
Mhm.
and if you have any questions for him, please do contact him. I really appreciate you being here, Ben. Honest to goodness, it was a great meeting, and I love the healer aspect. And like I said, because I have somewhere in my background, but I've always, I don't know, like all of the animals that the indigenous people, we call them indigenous now. That's what we call them here in Canada.
Yeah. Mhm.
Um, there are just the souls of the animals connected to the humans and all that. I fascinated all the time. So I totally understand that. And congratulations on all of your years of training. I mean, I know that, Brazil, the Philippines, and even India, there's so much training for spirituality. I believe in
Yeah.
spirituality and faith. So it was very nice having you on. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. Very much enjoyed engaging with you here.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Be sure to visit me at bleepbulimia.com.